Hi, everyone, and a very warm welcome to all of you to this episode of All Things Lean with your host, Madhulika Rajahan. In our last episode, we talked about positive friction, how you can use it to create better experiences. In this episode, we will talk about loss aversion. Really, what's the worst that can happen? There's a cognitive bias that makes us sadder to lose something than it makes us happy to gain it. This causes us to be afraid of loss, even when that fear is illogical. It prevents us from taking small risks to make big gains. For example, overcoming loss aversion can help you build better products and manage your life in a more objective manner. Loss aversion is a cognitive bias which is most readily identified by economists rather than psychologists. It's the fear of losing something, particularly when the reward for that loss is unclear. The bias occurs when it's hard to weigh up the consequences of loss. Yet, in order to benefit from something, we often have to give something up in return. You do it every time you go shopping. You get food and you give up money. Without food, you'd starve. But the benefits in this case are clear. When they become hazy, you're going to be much less likely to part away with your cash. Loss aversion. What does it really mean? Well, in its simplest form, you're going to be twice as upset to lose $100 as you would be to find $100. This isn't a very rational thing to happen. $100 is $100. We should theoretically be as happy to gain $100 as we would be sad when we lose $100. But that's now how we work. In fact, loss aversion can even come into play depending on the way we phrase something to someone. In that, it can be invoked by referring to a loss rather than a gain. Imagine a cancer patient with 6 months to live. Their doctor comes to them and says, "There is a new treatment. We need you to do this right away. If it's successful, you will be cured. But there's a 10% chance that you will die during the treatment." Then, on the other side of the country, another cancer patient with the same time to live has their doctor visit them. He says, "There is a new treatment. We need you to do this right away. If it's successful, you'll be cured. And there's a 90% chance that you will survive the treatment." The second cancer patient is much more likely to take up the treatment than the first one. Yet the two statements are identical. The chances of dying remain at 10% and the chances of living remain at 90%. But one statement invokes our fears of loss while the other does not, and the stakes don't come any higher than our lives, do they? This is an important thing because it means that we need to think about the way we communicate with other people. When we seek action, we are focusing too much on what could be lost rather than what could be gained. We can also influence loss aversion in other people. In fact, designers tap into this very often. Only 1 hour left to order for the next day delivery. The implication is that you will lose next day delivery if you delay the ordering. Only two of this item left in stock. The implication is that you might not be able to order at all if you don't order now, and so on. So how to tackle loss aversion? The best way to tackle loss aversion is to ask the simple question: what's the worst that can happen if I or we took this course of action? In the majority of cases, we can quickly put the loss in perspective. We might not win the contract. Are you expected to win 100% of contracts that you go for? If you are, you might want to talk to your boss about reasonable expectations. And if you're not, then it might be that losing that contract isn't really that big a deal. Even with our cancer patients, the worst that can happen is that they might die in 6 months earlier. The best that can happen is that their cancer is cured. It seems likely that their final 6 months with cancer are going to be unpleasant and painful. Dying on the operation table isn't something to look forward to, but it would be painless in comparison to the alternative. One of the issues with tackling loss aversion is that there is a good rationale basis for loss aversion. None of us want to lose $100. None of us want to lose the contract for our employer, and none of us want to die. Being risk averse is normal and natural. However, there are times when our aversion to risk prevents us from taking sensible risks that could bring in big rewards. If you struggle to take risks because of loss aversion and find that you can't overcome this on your own, you could consider working with a coach to overcome this and other cognitive biases. So, what's our takeaway? The fear of losing something is a rational fear. However, we need to put that fear into perspective with our potential gains. Overcoming loss aversion leads to better opportunities, not just in design, but also in life in general. You can tap into someone's loss aversion bias through your designs too. It can be used to drive decision making and sales. With this, we come to an end to this episode of All Things Lean. Don't forget to like and subscribe and comment in the comment section on what you'd like to hear more. Until next time, this is your host, Madhulika Rajahan, signing off. Have a wonderful day ahead.